All right, buckle up, everybody, because today we are diving deep, deep, deep into the Nothing Phone 2A. We've got 5 YouTube reviews to unpack, 2 from Trek and Tech, and then 1 each from Mehus the Boss, Marquise Brownlee, and of course, Sillycorns. So we are going to break it all down for you guys, help you decide if this phone is worth all the hype, and more importantly, is it worth your money?
It's, I mean, it's definitely got people talking, that's for sure. That see-through back with the guts kind of just hanging out there. It's unlike anything else out there right now.
Right. You don't see that every day. Some reviewers are calling it futuristic or like a premium cool toy, but some are saying it looks like, get this, a face with intestines coming out.
Intestines, yeah. That's that's one way to put it.
So what do you think? Is Nothing just trying to be different for the sake of it, or is there like a deeper meaning here?
Well, I think there's a growing trend of people wanting their tech to be more personal,
Yeah.
more expressive, not just these generic slabs of glass and metal.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what Nothing is going for here.
Yeah.
Making a statement about how we connect with our devices.
Interesting. I'm curious though, did any of the reviewers talk about like the practicality of this design? I mean, wouldn't a transparent back be a fingerprint magnet? And what about scratches?
Actually, a lot of them said the glass is pretty durable,
Yeah.
like surprisingly resistant to scratches.
Ah, okay.
Fingerprints, though, yeah, those are definitely noticeable.
Ah, figures.
But I mean, that's kind of the case with most glass phones these days, right?
True, true. All right, so let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? Those flashing lights on the back, officially called the glyph interface. What's the deal with those? Gimmick or game changer?
That is the question, isn't it? At first glance, it does seem pretty gimmicky, like, oh, look, flashing lights, how cool.
Right.
When you dig a little deeper, you start to see how it could actually be useful. Like, you can customize the light patterns for different notifications, so you know at a glance whether it's a call, a text, an email.
Yeah, that's neat.
And some reviewers even said it helped them cut down on screen time, since they didn't have to keep checking their phone every time it buzzed.
Interesting. So it's like a more subtle, less intrusive way of staying connected.
Exactly. But there are definitely some limitations.
Oh, like what?
Well, Microsoft pointed out that the glyphs don't really give you detailed information.
Mm.
Like, you have a notification, but you don't know which app it's from or what it says until you actually unlock your phone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And he also talked about the potential for false positives, as he called them, where like your phone lights up for something important, but it turns out to be just spam.
Right, right. So it's not perfect, but I mean, it's a pretty unique concept. Definitely something we haven't really seen before.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves. Maybe in future versions, they'll be able to add more functionality and more detail.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've got this interesting, shall we say, design and these glyph lights that could be really cool, but maybe aren't quite there yet. What about the rest of the phone, though? Can it actually keep up with the competition in terms of like performance and features?
Yeah, let's take a look under the hood, see what this thing can really do. So let's talk about the brains of the operation here. We've got the MediaTek Dimensity 7200 Pro.
Okay, MediaTek. How does that compare to like the Snapdragon processors you see in a lot of phones?
Right. Well, Qualcomm Snapdragon, they're definitely the big name in flagship phones. But MediaTek has been, really stepping up their game lately. This Dimensity 7200 Pro, it's a solid mid-range chip,
Mm-hmm.
and the benchmarks actually put it a little bit ahead of the Snapdragon 778.
Oh, wow, that's impressive. So good news on the processor front. What about RAM and storage? Those are pretty important for like multitasking and just overall speed.
Absolutely. The phone 2A comes with either 8 or 12 gigs of RAM,
Mhm.
which is, plenty for smooth multitasking. No problem there. And storage-wise, you've got options of 128 or 256 gigs.
Okay, not bad. But I remember some reviewers had concerns about the storage speed, right?
Yeah, that was one thing that came up. It uses UFS 2.2 storage, which is a bit slower than the UFS 3.0 or 2.1 you find in some other phones.
So is that like a deal breaker?
I'd say it depends on what you're using your phone for. For most everyday stuff, browse the web, social media, you probably won't even notice the difference.
Okay.
But if you're doing a lot of like transferring huge files or playing super graphics intensive games, then yeah, you might see some slower loading times.
Gotcha. Good to know. All right, moving on to software. This phone runs Nothing OS, is that right?
That's right. Version 2.5 based on Android 14.
And what's the user experience like?
The software is definitely one of the highlights here. It's clean, it's minimalist, there's no bloatware, which is always nice.
Always a plus.
And they've really focused on customization. You've got things like a dotted font, customizable widgets, AI wallpapers, even a monochrome icon pack if you're into that sort of thing.
Sounds pretty slick. Did any particular features stand out to the reviewers?
Oh yeah, a couple of things. The recorder widget got a lot of praise.
Hmm.
It lets you record calls without that annoying beep that usually alerts the other person.
Oh, sneaky.
And then there's this cool feature where you can enlarge app icons.
That's a good accessibility option.
Exactly.
So it seems like nothing is really committed to this whole idea of making technology more, like, human-centered.
Yeah, giving users more control,
Right.
letting the tech fade into the background.
And of course, we can't forget about those glyph lights.
Right, those are integrated into the software too, not just a visual thing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Give us some examples of how that works.
Well, you can set different light patterns for different contexts. So, you know who's calling just by looking at the back of your phone. They can also act as a visual timer, like if you're cooking or something. And they even visualize your music playback, which is kind of cool.
So it's not all just for show?
No, there's some actual functionality there.
Awesome. Okay, so we've got this unique design, solid performance, innovative software.
And don't forget, great battery life. Both Traken Tech and Marquise Brownlee were impressed with that.
Oh, yeah, that's important. But what about the cameras? I mean, that's a make or break feature for a lot of people.
You're absolutely right. And the cameras on this phone are, well, they're a bit of a mixed bag.
Ooh, intriguing. Let's talk cameras. So, spill the beans. What did the reviewers think of the cameras?
Well, the general consensus is that they're, decent for the price, but don't expect anything amazing.
Okay, so like good enough for everyday snaps, but maybe not for like serious photography?
Yeah, pretty much. A few reviewers mentioned that the photos could be a bit inconsistent, especially in tricky lighting.
Makes sense.
Marquise Brownlee, he specifically said that the dynamic range wasn't anything special.
Dynamic range. Now, remind me what that is again.
Right, so dynamic range is basically how well the camera can capture detail in both the bright and dark areas of a scene. So like if you're taking a picture with a lot of contrast, like a sunset, you might lose detail in the shadows or the highlights might get blown out.
Ah, gotcha. So what about low light performance?
That was actually a pleasant surprise. Sillycorns actually found the low light performance to be pretty good. And they also praised the stability of the video recording. They even said it outperformed the Poco X6 in that regard.
Oh, wow. Okay, so not a total disaster then.
No, not at all. Serviceable, I'd say, but not outstanding.
Right. We did hear about some quirks, though. What were those?
Yeah, Traken Tech mentioned that the portrait mode could be a little overzealous, sometimes blurring out parts of the subject that should be in focus.
Ah, yeah, I've seen that happen before. It's annoying.
And then a couple of reviewers said the selfie video quality wasn't great.
Okay, so maybe not the best for vloggers. All right, so it sounds like the cameras are a bit of a trade-off. You get decent quality for everyday use. But if you're really into photography, you might want to look elsewhere.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, so we've covered the design, the glyph interface, performance, software, cameras. It's time for the big question. Is the Nothing Phone 2A worth the hype?
Well, based on everything we've seen in these reviews, I'd say it's a stylish phone. It's definitely different, that's for sure. And it's got some genuinely innovative features.
Yeah, those glyph lights are pretty cool.
But it's not perfect, obviously.
Yeah.
The cameras could be better, and the glyph interface, it has potential, but it's not quite there yet.
Right.
So it really comes down to what you're looking for in a phone.
I think that's a great point. If you want something that stands out from the crowd, something unique, and you're willing to, maybe compromise a little on camera quality, then the Nothing Phone 2A might be right up your alley. All right, well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the Nothing Phone 2A. Thanks for listening, everyone. And be sure to let us know in the comments what you think. Is this phone the future of smartphones or just a flash in the pan?